Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Manny Diaz Show. Joe Zgacki alongside University of Miami head coach Manny Diaz, my broadcast partner Don Bailey Jr. This week, the Hurricanes on the road to finish up the regular season against the Duke Blue Devils in Durham, North Carolina. This past week, Canes were at Marlins Park. Coach against FIU, a tough night at the office, not what you're hoping for, but hard-fought battle came up on the short end.
Yeah, very disappointing night. Learned some hard lessons, I would say in life, when you keep getting presented with the same obstacle, then you haven't learned your lesson from that obstacle. And obviously, we have done a poor job in terms of preparing our team to play against teams that we are supposedly superior to. And when you enter a game like that with the wrong mentality, you give another team hope. You compound that by throwing interceptions, turning the ball over, and then you get into a battle that mentally you're probably not ready to get into. So again, we have to prepare our team much better than what we did on Saturday. To their credit, they fought. Our guys will fight, but it was too little, too late. We did too much damage to ourselves by not being ready to play.
Coach, your in-season schedule is that you meet on Sundays, you play Saturdays, you do meet on Sundays, have Mondays off, the players do, and then you're back to work. What did you address with the team as a group on Sunday evening?
Well, when you talk in front of a team, you want to make sure that when you have their attention, you don't want to just be telling them just stories. You want to be able to back up everything you say either with data or video. And so when you pull back and you analyze last Saturday and you pull it back in the context of the entire season, you say, we've seen this performance in some way, shape, or form 5 times this season. We saw elements of this performance at North Carolina. We saw elements of this performance for sure against Central Michigan. We saw elements of this performance against Virginia Tech. And we saw elements of this performance against Georgia Tech. And then obviously it showed up on Saturday. Well, what did all those things have in common? North Carolina is a team that we blew out the year before. Central Michigan is a team that got blown out by Wisconsin, didn't look great on film coming into the game. Georgia Tech was blown out the week before. Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech were both blown out by Duke the week before we played them. And FIU looked absolutely listless against FAU their last time out. So there's something about our players seeing that tape, our coaches' messaging, starting with me, and how we message to our team those weeks. Because one thing that we have shown is that anything this year that we think is going to be easy becomes very, very hard. And when we think things are going to be hard, our guys really fight, and they're resilient and tough and all those type things that you wanted to establish in year one. But this has been our tripwire, and you have to take a step back and see it. We talked about, and the thing is, it's all we talked about in the messaging before the game was we did not play well versus Central Michigan. Let's analyze why that was, and let's come out with a better performance this time around. So it's not about head knowledge, because somehow that had been discussed. It was the heart knowledge and really getting that through, and that to me comes down to your habits and practice, and that's where it comes back to us. To make sure that we are disciplining any and all signs where there may be some sort of complacency going on the practice field. And that's where, again, I've got to do a better job with myself and my staff to make sure that going forward these type of things don't happen again.
You have 2 games left, the regular season game and a bowl game, so you're always trying to push forward. How do you push forward? I think one of the toughest jobs that any coach has, whether it's football coach or basketball coach at the college level is, and we always talk about trying to get older, but the game keeps getting younger. And so you're dealing with 18 to 20-year-olds primarily. And you're probably not going to find a group anywhere that is more inconsistent than 18 to 20-year-olds. Yet you've got to find a way to have them be at a certain level all the time.
Yeah, and we've talked about it, that we do have a young team. And young teams do tend to act immaturely, which it speaks a little bit to what we talk about. But we're in week 11 now. Right. We can't make the youth excuse anymore. But it is hard. The challenge all across college football is, how do we be the same team every week? How do you get the same team to the park every Saturday afternoon? And that's no easy task. And you see it all around college football. Because to be honest, it doesn't really matter about FIU who you play. If you don't show up to play. In college football now, anybody can just about beat anybody, and we've seen that. So that's our challenge. And again, we are learning lessons on terms of how to become a big-time program. We got served a harsh one on Saturday. We have to own it. And like I said, the key is it a lesson? Is it something that you can learn from and correct going forward?
Coach, it's early in the week, but how do you feel they took the lesson Sunday night and what you've seen around the office prior to the week beginning?
Well, they understood for sure.
I mean, they sure felt it, right?
Well, we all have to own it.
Yeah.
It's all part of something that can never be erased. And from our resume, and that's, but it can also serve as a wake up call. It's all about the response to it. And the guys that control the response are the guys that sit in those seats behind us in those team meetings. So they have the chance to fix it, to get it right, and turn it into a harsh reminder and a harsh lesson on what can never happen again here.
We're going to push go forward here. We just wrap up FIU talk this way because there are a lot of different areas that you talked about, third downs, fourth downs, whatever the situation. Don and I felt like at halftime, it's only 13-0, but this gets to like time and score. The way the game was being played, even to come back in that one to get the 14 probably was going to take a lot of time. And so maybe that's a lesson too, that the urgency is that it got to be right at the beginning. Even if it says 13-0, some games 13-0 might feel more like 20-0.
Well, there's no doubt there were only 4 possessions on offense in the first half.
Okay.
Part of that went down to our, again, we didn't play great on third down on defense in the first half of the game. You mentioned that we, not capitalizing on some red zone drives where we had some, layups that we should have converted for 4th and 1 that we didn't. So that's a part of it. But look, the mind is the most important thing we're talking about here. And it's two minds. It's our mind and their mind. How do you give a team, again, coming off of a bad loss, which FIU did 2 weeks ago, how do you give a team hope?
Right.
Well, you throw them an interception on the second play of the game. You give them hope by, not tackling a screen pass, short of a first down, make them kick a field goal. And all of a sudden, again, you get a team that's going to be already playing as excited to play as they are all year against anybody. Then you give them a big shot in the arm. Now you got to fight the best version of them. So again, what we allowed, not just with where our mind's not being in the right spot, but then getting, it's just classic underdog. And let's go back to Georgia Tech. I'm saying we've seen this game before. Okay, Georgia Tech. What do? You give up a touchdown on offense in the first drive. You give up a fake punt. So what does that do to a sideline of a team that's not used to winning? Now all of a sudden you're playing a different version of those guys, and now they're fighting. Now they're running harder. They're doing everything harder because they're like, hey, we have a chance today. And that's all about entering the game with the proper mentality. And I think that's the lesson we have to learn coming out of this.
Through all the smoke, who played well?
There were a lot of guys that fought, battled, and did a really nice job. Our offensive line did a really nice job. Obviously, Jaron was pretty well protected for the majority of the night. We did a really nice job running the ball. You have to note Cam Harris and Robert Burns coming in and running the ball well. After DJ's injury, which I thought was important for us. Will Mallory played really well in the absence of Brevin Jordan. Will was the guy that we thought he could be, going into the year, and is just continuing to develop and is really going to become a really special player for us. Defensively, there's a lot of guys that fought, battled, played well. Romeo Finley played well in there. A lot of guys up front, hung in there. But just not enough. Not enough guys and not enough urgency from the start to exert our authority on the game.
Well, Mallory made a great catch, by the way, the one he had to go down low. But if your team doesn't get your message, I'm sitting right next to you, and I can feel the energy. So if they can't feel the energy, I don't know what it will take, because clearly you're giving them a good message, and it's bothering you. Is there an emotion that you want them to feel going into this Duke game?
The word is urgency. But it's crazy because there were 2 words, again, we talk about messaging. The 2 buzzwords that we mentioned for FIU was urgency and focus. Play with the highest sense of urgency you have all year, and supreme focus. And I'm talking about, this is Tuesday practice, Wednesday practice, Thursday. And obviously we didn't look like a very focused team. We didn't look like a very urgent team. So it's not just a matter of, what you say. It's got to be a matter of what you do. And that's ultimately, your culture is what you do. And that's why this is the hurdle that we're tripping on. Now, do I suspect we'll have a different response? Our guys, 2 weeks ago, our guys were, there's a great feeling around here and everybody's feeling really good. Does that help lead to the complacent? Yeah, and that's part of it in terms of understanding to, not understand the high highs or to not give a lot of credit to the high highs and not give a lot of credit to the low lows. So there's some high highs a couple weeks ago. Those feelings are liars. These low feelings, these feelings are liars too. The focus at hand is, again, to find a way to play, to be the best version of ourselves on Saturday at Duke.
Coach, let's spend a minute on Robert Burns. This is a guy that if any Hurricane fan has ever had the chance to meet is find a guy that's ever been in this building.
Yeah.
Has had a tough high school career. I mean, he was ranked high as far as the ratings go, but has been suffering injuries since high school.
Right.
And I got a lot of joy out of seeing the success he had with the few carries that he had against FIU. It looks like he wants to contribute. There's no question about that.
He really does. He's been a good special teams player for us this year, and I always say you can tell a lot about how the football team feels about one of their teammates by when you watch the reaction of the sideline when a guy makes a play out there, and when Robert broke a couple of those long runs, and you just feel the energy and watch our guys on our bench. You can tell that meant a lot to our guys because they know what he's been through. He's had to rehab through some very frustrating injuries, and it was great to see him, especially in his home city, to get out there and make some big plays.
Duke is coming up on Saturday. Two things about that. One, you only get 12 games, right? You only guaranteed 12. You're going to have a bowl game, but it's the last game of the year, so you hope guys embrace that. And two, the opponent, they've lost 5 in a row.
Right.
They would like to, I would imagine they have a lot of the same feelings maybe we're experiencing. They would like to win a game too to finish the season.
Well, of course, and it'll be their senior day,
right? Yeah.
For their seniors up there, and Duke is a team that beat us a year ago, so we've got to keep that in mind. But as you mentioned, it's a great example. So again, what I say, life provides the same obstacle until you learn how to solve it. You have a team, by all appearances, is struggling. And you mentioned their record, the games that they've lost in a row. They actually have a way to get into a bowl game, even at 5-7, right, because of their APR. So we will still get a strong effort from those guys. They do things on all 3 phases that make them very dangerous. But what does it come down to? It comes down to us. It comes down to our preparation. It comes down to how we prepare mentally for this game, how we practice this week, because it's just going to reflect in the way that we play. And I think that's the thing. And we've seen great versions of that. And that's the part that you don't lose. And that's the part you explain to our guys. When we are locked in, we play so well. So why do we choose? What makes you choose that your best is not required? Is your best not required because they've lost so many games in a row? Does that really matter? It really doesn't matter, because no one walks on the field. We don't walk on the field next week and on our helmet it says we lost last week. Its scoreboard starts 0-0. It's 1st and 10. It doesn't start 1st and 12. It's a new game every week, and the same thing with them. And I think that's the habit we have to break, where you watch a team and say, well, maybe I don't have to play as hard as I have to play, or I don't have to prepare quite like I did for Florida State week, quite like I did for Louisville week, because this is only FIU. And that idea of not being a chooser is what big-time programs have, and that's what we're aspiring to be.
Coach, isn't it also the part of it that you don't even want them to pick and choose on how they prepare? You want it to be consistent,
there's no doubt,
day in and day out at the highest level that they can give you each time.
Right, and it's got to be a habit.
Yeah. It's
got to be a habit, and you got to fall in love with the habit of preparing. The habit of playing. Everybody loves to play. You have to fall in love with your preparation.
Correct.
And that is the thing, again, that the younger you are in the team, normally that's what you struggle with the most. And you can see it. You can see it by some of our players who have been, showing some great high highs and some great low lows. A lot of times that's usually what that signifies. That the guys, when they really are prepared and they really do lock in, you see that happen. Now the older guys, you don't have to worry about Shaq Quarterman preparing for a game. He knows what it takes. He knows what he's got to put in during the week. We got to get more guys on that level.